I've worn the badge for nearly 20 years. Every morning, I pin it onto my uniform, a small but powerful emblem of authority, order, and duty. In a city like Detroit, where crime never sleeps and danger lurks behind every abandoned building, the badge is more than just metal. It's a shield, a symbol, a responsibility. I tell myself that every time I step into my squad car. For years, I believed in the order things. There were the good guys, the bad guys, and the ones who got caught in between. The streets of Detroit were filled with stories of loss, of broken homes, of men and women clawing their way through a world that had already given up on them. But to me, the world wasn't complicated. You were either on the right side of the law or the wrong one, and I had no patience for the ones who chose the latter. I learned to compartmentalize the things I saw. The gunshots echoing through the night, the cries of mothers clutching their sons, the streets lined with flickering police lights, sirens wailing like a ghost song over the city. I had to. If you let it get inside your head, you wouldn't last a week. But maybe it had already gotten inside my head. Maybe it had been there all along. I became hard, cold. I justified everything I did in the name of keeping the peace. The arrests, the force, the lines I crossed, they were necessary. At least, that's what I told myself. My father had been a cop, my grandfather before him. I was raised on the idea that law and order had to be maintained at all costs. No room for second chances. No room for sympathy. Especially not for them. The ones on the other side of town. The ones the media loved to defend, but the statistics never lied about. The ones who flooded the system with crime, drugs, and destruction. I didn't just enforce the law. I became the law. And then one night, everything changed. It was supposed to be a routine stop. A simple traffic violation. I pulled up behind a car, flashing my lights, waiting for the driver to comply. He hesitated, just for a second. That was enough to make my heart quicken, my instincts sharpen. Another night, another suspect, another moment where a decision could mean life or death. I stepped out of the car, my boots hitting the pavement with practiced authority. I kept my hand near my holster as I approached. License and registration. I said, my voice steady controlled. The driver, a man in his late 20s, reached for his wallet, but his hands were shaking. He was nervous, too nervous. That's when I saw it. A flash of something metallic, a glint in the dim light. My body moved on instinct. I didn't think. I reacted. I reached for my gun. The next few moments happened in slow motion. The man's hand shot up, his voice panicked. No, wait, please. Too late. The shot rang out. The sound of it split the night apart, a deafening crack against the empty street. The man stumbled back, his body hitting the pavement, his eyes, wide, disbelieving, locked onto mine. And then silence. I felt nothing. No regret, no guilt, just a cold, numbing certainty that I had done what I was trained to do, what I had done a dozen times before. It wasn't until later that I learned the truth. He hadn't been reaching for a weapon. It wasn't a gun. It was his wallet. A simple black leather wallet. And just like that, a life was gone. Because of me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car long after the scene had been cleared, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. Who was I? A hero? A protector? Or had I become something else entirely? The justifications, the statistics, the orders I had followed, they all began to unravel. For the first time, I couldn't escape the truth. And then, as if fate itself had been waiting for this moment, my chest tightened. A crushing pain surged through me, burning, twisting, suffocating. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. The last thing I saw before the world faded into blackness was the flashing red and blue lights of my own patrol car. And then, nothing. Darkness. Before we continue this incredible story, I want to invite you to be part of our special community. If this story is touching your heart, if you've ever questioned life, faith, or redemption, then subscribe to this channel and leave a like to support our work. We share real testimonies, deep reflections, and experiences that can transform lives. And today, we have something special for you. Drop a comment with your name and your city. And in the next video, We will send you a personal message. Imagine thousands of people hearing your name, being part of something bigger, something meaningful. This is your chance to be part of this journey. Let's build this space together, filled with faith, love, and truth. See you in the next chapter. There was nothing, no sound, no weight, no sense of time. Just an infinite abyss stretching beyond the edges of my consciousness. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't awake. I simply was. A strange kind of stillness surrounded me. A void unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't cold, nor was it warm. It was something else entirely. An absence, a hollowness that pressed against my soul like a weight I couldn't shake. I tried to move, but my body didn't respond. I tried to breathe, but there was no air. Panic should have risen inside me, but it didn't. Instead, there was an eerie calm, like I was floating through a dream I couldn't wake from. And then I saw it. A dim light flickered in the distance. Small at first, barely noticeable against the heavy darkness. But as I focused on it, it grew slowly, steadily. It pulsed rhythmic, like a heartbeat echoing in the void. I don't know how, but I was drawn to it, pulled forward, though my feet never touched the ground. It wasn't just light. It was something more, something alive. But as I drifted closer, something else stirred in the shadows, a presence, and it wasn't welcoming. The darkness shifted, twisting around me like smoke, curling into shapes that weren't quite human. I couldn't see their faces, but I could feel them watching. A suffocating weight pressed against me, anger, regret, pain. Whispers rose from the void, low at first, then rising, overlapping like a chorus of voices I couldn't escape. You did this. How many lives have you taken? How many did you hurt? You thought you were righteous? You were blind. I tried to push them away, tried to shut them out, but the words burrowed into my mind like thorns, each one pressing deeper than the last. Then the darkness moved. It swallowed the light, and I fell. I hit the ground hard. The impact sent a shock wave through my body, pain exploding through my limbs like fire. I gasped, feeling my lungs expand. Air, real air, burning its way into my chest. I was somewhere new, somewhere wrong. The ground beneath me was cracked and dry, like scorched earth. The sky above was a swirling mass of gray, thick clouds suffocating any hint of light. The air reeked of something I couldn't name, something old, something decayed. And then I heard the screams, distant at first, then closer, louder. They weren't human. I turned, my heartbeat hammering in my chest. Shadows moved in the distance, shifting, writhing. They weren't people. They were something else, something lost. Figures without faces, twisted forms, broken, crawling, reaching for something they would never grasp. I stumbled backward, my breath coming in sharp gasps. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. And yet, I knew it was. A deep, guttural voice rumbled through the air. You do not belong here yet. I turned sharply, my pulse spiking. A figure stood before me. It wasn't like the others. It wasn't writhing or lost. It stood tall, composed, its form flickering between shadow and something else. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its eyes. Cold, unforgiving. It stepped forward. You have walked the path of destruction. You justified your actions. You thought yourself above judgment. It leaned closer, though it had no mouth. I felt the words crawl over my skin like ice. Now you will know what it means to be judged. The ground beneath me cracked, and then I was falling again. The heat was unbearable. It wasn't just fire. It was something deeper, something that burned beyond flesh, beyond bone. It scorched my very being, curling around me like chains I couldn't escape. Screams echoed from every direction. But this time, they weren't just distant. They were inside me. Every soul I had wronged. Every life I had taken. Every time I had turned my back on mercy, on justice, on truth. I felt it all, not as an observer, but as the one who suffered. Memories ripped through my mind. The faces of the men I had beaten, the families I had shattered, the innocent lives I had stolen in the name of justice. And then I saw him, the man from the traffic stop. His body lay before me, unmoving, lifeless. His eyes stared back at me. But this time, they weren't filled with fear. They were filled with something worse. Disappointment. A weight crushed my chest. A scream clawed at my throat, but no sound came. I tried to run, tried to escape, but there was nowhere to go. And then, a voice unlike any other filled the air. Deep, powerful, final, enough. A force unlike anything I had ever felt slammed into me. The heat vanished. The screams faded. And then, silence. I opened my eyes. And before me, standing in the center of the darkness, was a light, a figure cloaked in radiance, too bright to look at, too overwhelming to ignore. And for the first time since my heart stopped beating in that cold Detroit street, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Fear. The light was unlike anything I had ever seen. It wasn't just bright. It was alive, pulsating, expanding, filling every inch of the darkness that had consumed me. I couldn't move, not out of fear, but because I was completely undone. The weight of its presence pressed against my chest, not in a painful way, but in a way that made me feel small, so insignificant compared to whatever stood before me. I had faced criminals. I had walked into gunfire. I had seen death, violence, and chaos. But this was power beyond comprehension. And yet, it wasn't angry. I expected wrath. I expected punishment. Instead, there was something else. Something I didn't deserve. Mercy. A voice, his voice, pierced through the silence. David. It wasn't like the voice from before. The one that accused me. The one that tore into my soul with every word. This voice was different. Firm, yet gentle. Powerful, yet full of compassion. It reached into the deepest, most broken parts of me. Places I had long since buried. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, my voice stolen. The light moved, not closer, but within me. Suddenly, the weight of my life, everything I had done, rose before me, not in memories, not in flashes, but as if I was living it all over again. I stood in my childhood home, watching my father as he laced his boots, his police badge shining under the dim yellow light of our kitchen. "Never let them take control," he said, his voice gruff as he sipped his coffee. "You show weakness, you lose. And in this world, losing means dying." I was just a boy, eager to prove myself, hungry for approval. I had spent my entire life trying to be the man he wanted me to be. Hard, unyielding, a soldier of the law. And yet, as I stood there, reliving the past, I felt something I had never felt before. Regret. The scene shifted. I was a rookie again, standing in a dark alleyway, my hands gripping a young man's collar. He was barely older than a teenager. His face was bruised, his lip bleeding. I had beaten him, not because he was a threat, not because he had resisted, but because I could, because I had power, because somewhere deep inside, I had convinced myself that he deserved it. I saw his eyes now, not the way I had seen them before, filled with defiance. Now I saw fear, hopelessness, a silent plea for mercy I had refused to give. One memory after another crashed over me. The faces of men I had brutalized, the innocent people I had treated like criminals, the families I had destroyed, the lies I had told to cover my own sins. I saw their suffering, and this time I felt it not as a spectator, but as if I was the one enduring it. Every punch, every kick, every scream, it became mine. I collapsed to my knees, gasping for air, my hands trembling. "Stop," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Please make it stop." The presence did not move. It did not judge. It only revealed. And then the voice spoke again. "Why do you weep, David?" My breath caught in my throat. Why? Because I had lived my entire life believing I was a good man. Because I had spent years justifying the unjustifiable. Because the truth was too much. Too heavy. I looked up, my vision blurred with tears. I didn't know. I choked out. The silence stretched. And then, gently, he spoke again. "Yes, you did." The words sliced through me. Because he was right. I had known. I had always known. I chose to ignore it. I chose the lies. And now, There was no hiding. I bowed my head, shame tightening around my throat. I was a murderer, a liar, a destroyer of lives. I didn't deserve forgiveness. I didn't deserve anything. And yet, the light remained, unmoving, unwavering, present. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. I remained on my knees, broken, emptied. The light did not retreat. It waited. For what? I wasn't sure. The weight of my sins pressed against my chest, suffocating me more than the darkness ever had. The memories had stopped flashing before me, but their echoes remained. I could still hear the cries, still see their faces, still feel the pain I had caused. I had never been afraid of judgment. I had never believed in it. Not really. I thought I was untouchable, that the things I did were justified by the laws I upheld. But this was different. This was truth, and truth could not be ignored. I forced myself to look up. The light had not moved. It stood unwavering, watching, waiting. I swallowed, my throat raw. Am I in hell? I asked. The silence stretched. Then the voice, calm, unshaken, spoke again. No, David. A pause. Not yet. My chest tightened. Not yet. The words held a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. I had come so close, so dangerously close. And the worst part? If I had gone there, if the darkness had swallowed me whole, I would have deserved it. There was no arguing that now. I clenched my fists. Why show me all of this? I asked, my voice hoarse. Why not just send me where I belong? The light shifted. For the first time, I felt it move toward me. Not like a force, not like judgment, but like something else, something gentle. Because I do not desire your destruction. The words settled over me like a whisper. I desire your transformation. A sob tore through me. I had spent my life believing in punishment, in consequences. But this was grace. And grace broke me in a way that judgment never could. I had always believed in power, in control. But now, as I knelt before something greater than I could comprehend, I realized the truth. I had never been in control. I had never had power. I had been a man enslaved to his own hatred, his own sins. And yet, despite everything, the light had not abandoned me. Despite everything, I was still here, still breathing, still being given a chance I did not deserve. The realization was unbearable. I bowed my head, and for the first time in my life, I whispered the words I had never spoken. Forgive me. Before we continue this journey, I want to invite you to be part of something special. If this story is resonating with you, if you feel something stirring within your heart, leave a like on this video and let us know where you're watching from. Drop a comment with your name and city, and in the next video, we will send you a personal greeting. Imagine hearing your name spoken to thousands of people, being part of this incredible community of faith, healing, and truth. This is your moment. Let us know you're here. We can't wait to share this journey with you. See you in the next chapter. The moment the words left my lips, the air around me shifted. It wasn't like before when the darkness had swallowed me whole. This was different, lighter, like something had been lifted. I remained on my knees, my chest rising and falling with ragged breaths, waiting, unsure of what would come next. And then the light spoke again. David, rise. The command was simple, but I couldn't move, not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't sure I was worthy. I had spent my life making others bow, forcing them into submission, controlling them through fear, through power, through force. Now I was the one brought low, and I deserved it. Yet the light had not destroyed me. It had revealed me, and now it was calling me to stand again. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced myself to move. My legs trembled as I pushed myself upward, my body feeling lighter than before. Not physically, but spiritually, as though something unseen had been lifted from my soul. I raised my eyes toward the light, and for the first time, I saw it wasn't just light, it was him. I had spent my whole life hearing about him, in whispered prayers, in church sermons I had ignored, in the faith of people I had mocked. But now there was no denying it. no running from it. Jesus stood before me, not like the paintings, not like the images framed in stained glass windows. He was more, a presence that commanded reverence, yet radiated love. His eyes met mine, and I felt exposed. Every sin, every thought, every act of cruelty. He saw it all, and yet he did not turn away. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I could only listen. "David," he said, "you have walked in blindness." I swallowed, my throat tight. I knew what was coming. Judgment, condemnation, everything I deserved. But his voice remained steady, filled not with anger, but with something else. "But now you will see." I barely had time to process the words before the world changed again. The light stretched around us, engulfing everything. And suddenly, I was standing somewhere else. A city, a place I recognized. Detroit, but not the way I had seen it before. Not as a cop, not through the eyes of judgment. This time, I saw it as it truly was. I saw the children, playing in the streets, their laughter ringing through alleyways lined with broken glass. I saw the single mothers, weary but strong, holding their families together with nothing but sheer will. I saw the young men, the ones I had feared, the ones I had hated, not as criminals, but as sons, as brothers, as lost souls searching for something I had spent my life denying them. Grace. Tears burned my eyes. I had spent years seeing only what I wanted to see, only what fit my version of the truth. But this was reality, not statistics, not numbers, not criminals versus law enforcement, but people I had ignored, people I had harmed, and now I couldn't look away. Jesus spoke again, his voice cutting through the vision. "You were meant to serve, David, not to rule, not to judge, but to serve." I clenched my jaw, my chest tightening. Serve. The word felt foreign. I had spent my entire life believing the opposite. That power was meant to be taken. That authority meant control. But I had been wrong. So desperately wrong. And now I had to choose. Would I return to the man I had been? Or would I become the man I was being called to be? For the first time, I understood. The badge I had once worn so proudly was not meant to be a weapon. It was meant to be a burden, a responsibility, a calling, and I had failed it. But now, I had been given something I never expected, a second chance. I turned my eyes back to him and whispered the only words that mattered. "What must I do?" The vision faded, and I was standing once again in the presence of the light. My chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, my mind reeling from what I had seen. I had spent my life believing in my own righteousness, convinced that I was upholding justice. But justice without mercy is not justice at all. And now, I was being asked to step into something I had never imagined. Not control, not authority, but service. Jesus stepped forward, his presence overwhelming yet impossibly gentle. "You asked what you must do, David," he said. "Now I will show you." The moment he spoke, the light shifted again. And suddenly, I was no longer in his presence. I was back in the real world, back in my body, back in a hospital bed. The sterile white walls surrounded me, the rhythmic beeping of machines filling the air. I gasped, my chest aching, my limbs heavy. I was alive, but I wasn't the same. I could feel it in my bones, in my soul. Something inside me had changed. My wife was at my side, her eyes swollen from tears, her hand gripping mine, as if she feared I would disappear again. And maybe in a way I already had. The man I had been was gone, and in his place, something new was being born. The days that followed were a blur. Doctors spoke in hushed tones about my heart attack, about how it was a miracle I had survived. My fellow officers visited, their faces filled with relief but also uncertainty. They didn't understand why I was different, but I did. I had been given a second chance. A chance not to continue the life I had lived, but to rewrite it. It wasn't easy. Stepping back into the world meant confronting my past, the cases, the people I had hurt, the families I had destroyed. I wanted to disappear, to hide from it all, but I couldn't, not anymore, because I had been called. And I knew, deep in my soul, that I could no longer be silent. I had to do what I was never willing to do before. I had to listen. I had to face the truth. And most of all, I had to make things right. Before we continue this journey, I want to invite you to be part of this incredible community. This channel doesn't make any money. We don't do this for profit. We do it because we believe in it, because we know that stories like this have the power to change lives. If this story has touched you, if you feel something stirring inside you, leave a like and subscribe to support this work. Your support is everything. It keeps this community growing. It keeps these messages reaching those who need them most. And together, we are creating something powerful, something real. Thank you for being here. Let's keep walking this journey together. I wasn't the same man who had worn the badge with pride. I wasn't the same man who had justified his actions with cold logic and empty rules. That man had died the night I collapsed on the street. And in his place, something new had emerged. Not perfect, not whole, but changed. It wasn't enough to simply say I had seen the truth. I had to live it. So I did the hardest thing I had ever done. I went back to the people I had harmed, to the families I had shattered, to the communities I had once feared and hated. And I faced them as a man, not as a cop, not as an authority figure, but as a servant. I spoke with young men who had spent their lives being told they were criminals before they had even committed a crime. I sat with mothers who had lost their sons, some at the hands of men like me. I listened. For the first time in my life, I truly listened, and I saw them, not as suspects, not as threats, but as God's children, the way I should have seen them all along. It wasn't easy. Some people refused to hear me. Some still saw me as the man I had been, and maybe they always would, and I accepted that, because this journey wasn't about seeking forgiveness for myself. It was about giving back what I had stolen. It was about living the truth I had once denied. And most of all, it was about love. There are moments in life that define us, moments that break us, moments that rebuild us. That night when my heart stopped beating, I thought it was the end. But now I know it was only the beginning. A second chance, a new mission, not to control, not to enforce, but to heal, to serve, to love. And for the rest of my life, that is what I will do. Before you go, I have something important to tell you. This journey doesn't end here. There's another video waiting for you, one that will be revealing in your life. All you have to do is click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Go watch it. It may be exactly what you need to see today. And before you leave, don't forget to give this video a like and comment amen below. Because as long as you keep believing, as long as you keep seeking, you will continue to be blessed.